everyone, Alexa Donne here, and this is the sister video to a video I recently posted about how your agent isn't your friend, your editor isn't your friend, and I hinted at this. Basically, that outline morphed into me going really into the weeds on corporate media business norms and business communication, and I realized it should really be its own video because they can't all be an hour and a half. But also because, of course, some people might be searching for this specific topic and it's easier to find as a standalone video. A pitfall I have absolutely seen some authors fall into is not quite understanding how the publishing industry really works as a corporate media industry, or just a corporate industry. And it can be hard to understand those norms if you've worked in a completely different industry with different norms, especially for communication and interaction, or if you haven't had a corporate job ever. Corporate jobs are honestly really weird. It's not like Office Space, so it can be like Office Space, and the Gen Zs are going, what's Office Space? I mean, your point of reference absolutely colors your experiences, and I thought I would share as someone who has worked in corporate media for over 15 years and worked as an author with publishing companies for 7 years. And in those 7 years, I've been with 2 different publishers, but I also have friends who work for multiple of the different publishers. And like, you chat, you swap stories, especially with someone with a day job in an adjacent industry. I'm not an expert, but I have a decent handle on some of the corporate media norms that I am excited to share. These are just little contextual things that might help you a lot with some of your future business communication and interactions with professionals, especially at your publishing house, which can only improve your interactions and relationship with them. Generally, I do think it is important to stress, which is why I made an entire video about friendship and boundaries in your agent-editor professional relationships, but professionalism and business norms, they are important things to bear in mind and to essentially follow the status quo. Business norms aren't by themselves bad, and understanding what they are, why they exist, and where you're gonna fall in line versus maybe push the envelope a little bit, I think are just really important lessons for authors to learn. While corporate culture can be really stuffy, and some of these things I talk about, you might throw up your arms and go, oh, but that's really annoying. But professionalism and business norms aren't inherently a bad thing. Common guidelines help people communicate more effectively, work better with each other, and that's why the disconnect, if you're less familiar with these business norms that seem obvious to tons of people but aren't necessarily obvious to you, learning them can only help you. But first, I'm gonna call this the anti-gaslighting break. But I wanna say right at the top, capitalism sucks and the publishing industry can be awful, like really awful. As authors, we joke all the time that publishing actively works on a regular basis to keep you as off-kilter as possible, to actively gaslight you, to make you feel off-center and bad about yourself. That is actually a feature of the industry. It is not a bug. It sucks, and you go, well then, why are you in the industry? You can make a choice. And it's kind of, you know, better the devil you know. If you've made a choice to go into traditional publishing, you've looked at the pros and you've looked at the cons. One of the cons is just any corporate capitalist business is going to have a lot of bullshit. So publishing has tons of bullshit. So I'm telling you that you are not crazy and you're not wrong if you kind of tilt your head and go, what? I am here to sanity check you, but also to share how to go along to get along. But like, as zen and like professional and advice giving as I can be in videos, I just want you to know that I get frustrated all the time. I get upset all the time. Per the previous topic, this is why I have publishing friends, because I rant and I vent to them and they rant and they vent to me and we sanity check each other all the time. That is a really important role of publishing friends. Less so agents and editors. Your agent can definitely provide a sanity check, but your editor works for the publishing company, so be careful. Now, I mentioned this in the previous video, but in case you don't watch that, I want to talk about top-down corporate models. In that video, I called it the corporate funnel or the capitalism funnel. But I was talking specifically about editors. I want to talk more broadly here, and that is 90% of the time, the publishing employees you are going to come into direct contact with, who will actually email you and communicate with you or end up on a call with you, are going to be employees at the bottom rung of publishing. Yeah, sometimes you might end up talking to a VP of publicity or meet like a director of sales, but in terms of day-to-day communication, it's going to be your editor, maybe a publicist, maybe a marketer. They're usually going to be more junior, not always, but even if you have a senior editor, you're still working with someone who's at the bottom of a structure that funnels up. Well, I know technically funnels go down, that feeds up to a CEO, corporate overlord, and a bunch of C-suite people whose sole interest is to make money. But speaking to that majority of employees who you're going to talk to who are lower in the corporate structure, they don't have as much power as you think they do. Most often, they are overworked and severely underpaid. Even those with a fancy title might not have as much power as you think they do. They are beholden to bottom lines and budgets and P&Ls and all sorts of corporate gobbledygook. And it's also a facet of their job that they're not always necessarily allowed to tell you what they actually think or feel about something. They have to toe a company line. That's part of working for a company. You represent the company and you have to reflect the company values, goals, etc., etc. I say this to point out that with the employees who are overworked, don't make a lot of money, and don't have a lot of power, I say all of this to contextualize what I want to talk about when you are frustrated and kind of being aware of punching down. As much as we, the authors, are powerless in a lot of ways, we are beholden to our publishers. In some cases, that's not true. And situationally, that cannot be true. You are ultimately an independent contractor. You can walk away if you want. Publishing doesn't pay your salary. We wish they paid us more. They pay us advances and then sometimes royalties. And of course, if you are dependent on publishing money to clothe and feed yourself, etc., then I would hope you would be more understanding of the corporate employee's role. But being a corporate employee, especially a lower tier one who doesn't have a lot of power, your days can be made or broken by how people communicate with you, how they talk to you, and how they make you feel. And so I just want to remind authors that even if you are really frustrated and you're having a bad day and your publisher fucked up, because honestly, they probably did fuck up, and they're probably lying to you about it, they're probably gaslighting you about it. But even when you feel that way, don't take it out on the publishing employees that you directly interact with. First of all, this is where your agent comes in handy. It is literally their job to be your advocate and to smooth this communication for you. Plenty of us do directly communicate with members of our publishing team, and so I just caution you to always be careful of expressing raw emotion in the moment when you are feeling it. I have this personal mantra. I no longer tweet, but when I did, I didn't tweet angry, I don't text angry, I don't email angry, I don't Reddit post / comment angry, because I know in the heat of the moment, I can be sharp with my words and I can say things that I wish I hadn't said that I will regret. So I have that mantra for myself, and I advise you to do the same thing when it comes to your publishing communication. Always be mindful of who you are communicating with, and the thing that I always like to think of is you don't want to be the worst part of someone's day. I have absolutely seen some authors use members of their publishing team as emotional punching bags, whether they meant to or not, and all it takes is rubbing someone the wrong way, being the worst part of their day, and that can absolutely have repercussions on your career down the line. Plus, just generally, like, be a better person. Generally, I want to talk about business communication, the nitty-gritty of business communication and what are considered more or less norms, especially in corporate media. Primary mode of communication is going to be on email, and when you're composing emails, always think about being business casual, friendly, succinct, factual. The hard part is you need to do this even when something is wrong. When you're upset about something or confused about something, you need to really drill down and be as circumspect and professional as possible in your communication. No long ranting screeds or going in the weeds of explanation about something. And I say this as someone who is prone to emails like this. I can get really defensive, and I think it's a natural thing to get defensive. This happens in my day job too. You know that whole don't email angry thing? This is part of it. Sometimes I will type out the defensive response, especially when someone sends me a passive aggressive email. We're gonna talk about how you should not send passive aggressive emails because no one likes that in any job, but especially in corporate culture, like no one likes passive aggressive people, and they're the people that you end up, you know, finding ways not to do things for in your business relationship. I will sometimes type out my dream response, my dream clapback. Then I'll delete most of it and just say something just, you know, short and sweet, maybe a wee bit sassy, but the kind of sass, there's like professional business sass is a thing, but you got to be really careful with it, because if people know that it's professional business sass, then they know you're being passive aggressive. Point is, be careful with this. Sometimes I'll like be sending my editor back something, you know, she gave me a note and I don't agree with the note and I've done an edit, and I'll type this long screed and then I'll be like, you cannot send this to your editor, you sound unhinged. Just cut it back, cut it back. And when I'm actually like legitimately upset about something, I talk to my agent first. It's that don't email angry thing. But let's take the emotion out of it. Let's say it's just normal business communication. Again, I am someone prone to very long-winded emails, and a trick I learned years ago is the magical bullet pointed list. If you can find a way to frame your topic or request in a way that can be broken down visually, you can also do some bolding. It helps people literally read your emails, move through your emails, and not become overwhelmed. Because imagine someone is receiving 50, 100, 200 emails a day. It can really range. Some people are incredibly busy with very bogged down inboxes, and you want to be sending them emails that really kind of get to the point quickly and have action items very clear. I like to have like an introduction sentence that kind of like says what the email is about, with some niceties. You want to throw in some business casual social niceties. Hope you're doing well. Happy Friday. Those are some nice classics. Then you get to the meat of the thing. Bullet points are great, or however you're going to do it to kind of, you know, shortly and concisely say what it is that you were emailing about. And then if it is one of those longer ones with bullet points, I love a summary. So let me know about that blah, 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 and let me know if you have any questions. Best regards, Alexa. Always bear in mind tone. What I mean by business casual is friendly but professional. Also very, very important is a good subject line. Again, editors or publicists or what have you receive a lot of emails. It's really easy to get lost in someone's inbox. And a lot of corporate professionals, we live and die by the search tool. They might look at your email, glance at it, you kind of file in your mind, okay, I've got this from this, but later they're going to go back to it. It can get pushed down in an inbox, it can get lost. Keywords are your friends. You want to make sure that you have really strong keywords, both so when they first see it, they can identify whether or not it's urgent and start prioritizing it in their mind, and second, so that they can find it later. So you don't want to send things that are titled like my book or marketing questions. That is far too vague. Now you could say marketing questions, the bitter end. Some samples of emails I've received from my editor, as well as some that I've sent, just to give you a couple of examples. When my editor emails me, she's incredibly organized. She'll say, the bitter end, acknowledgements and dedication, or the bitter end, 2P, that means second pass pages, in parentheses, due 5/15. It's clear, it's concise, it lets me know exactly what's in the email. I think we all hate that anxiety of like the vaguely subject titled email where it could be good or bad when you click inside and you're like fearing it. And passive aggressive subject lines are also bad. I do work with some people professionally. You know, they work for more like mom and pop businesses that I have interaction with in the course of my corporate job. And when I get like a comedic or passive aggressive subject line, Not a fan, especially when it's because I've missed a deadline. Don't do that to me. Just always kind of bear in mind where a person might be in their day and kind of their personality and your relationship with them. And examples of subject lines I send to my editor. The bitter end, blurbs, when I want to start a conversation about blurbs. The bitter end, progress, when I'm sending her a progress report for my interminable writing, revision, and editing process. Or PDQ, promotional follow-ups, is one I sent, which was we had already had a conversation about marketing related things, and I was sending a like kind of follow-up email about things that I either still had questions about or that we still had to do. You can hear some buzzwords in there of like business words, follow-up, progress report, checking in. Those are corporate buzzwords that a lot of people use and you can use as well. Another thing that falls under my personal opinion and also speaks to one of my weaknesses is to streamline your email requests. What I mean by this is there's a danger zone in dumping a million things into one really long email. Even if you're using bullet points, it can become overwhelming, and just naturally as human beings, we tend to like hone in on one or two things that will stay top of mind. It's just easier for things to get lost in the shuffle. And I've learned this over the years from writing epic screeds and sending them especially to my agent. And the follow-up process just got a lot messier because then you have one email thread like you're in Gmail and it's going in like 8 different directions. So now I'm a lot more mindful of breaking up my email threads with my agent or my editor. Some of this means I have to really stay on top of things, and I recommend this to you as well. If you know that you have a ton of stuff that you want to talk about, take notes for yourself, write it down, and figure out ways to break it up, and break up when you are sending them. Don't send your editor or your publicist 8 emails in like 2 days about a bunch of different things. I like to be thoughtful and strategic about the timing of when I am emailing someone on my publishing team, bearing in mind the time of year, lead up to release, schedules, etc. So for example, I try not to get too cart before horse, and I suggest this to you too. You can talk to your agent about any of these to kind of check what their feeling is. I don't recommend sending an email 9 months before your book comes out with 12 bullet points about marketing. It's a little too soon. It's a little too much. If launch hasn't even happened for your season, they're not even thinking about your book. But it could be picking, okay, we're 3 months out, 4 months out. Ooh, and I know that my editor has a vacation here. So I'm gonna send this email to them at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday after they've come back from their trip, and so on. My next caution is to always assume good faith and to act in good faith in your business communication with your team. What I mean by that is I think that it's a little too easy to assume the worst, or to assume ill intention, or to assume a fuck up, for lack of a better word, when you're going back and forth with someone, especially if it's a slightly charged situation where something needs to happen but hasn't happened, or you're behind the 8 ball, or it's just a really serious subject. I have absolutely seen some authors approach an interaction with their publisher in bad faith. It comes across in the tone of the email and the approach and the scope of the ask, and it sets everyone on edge and gets the interaction off to a bad start. You should always consider how you would want to be spoken to or emailed, and how certain tone or phrasing might make you feel. Imagine yourself on your worst day, whether you have a day job or you don't, but assume you're overwhelmed and you have a lot going on and you're human and you make mistakes. How would you feel if someone sent the same missive to you? Essentially, I advise an empathy-led approach where you put yourself in someone else's shoes and think before you send. Some understanding and kindness, especially in a situation where someone did actually mess up, goes a long, long way. And it also goes both ways. You want your publishing team to assume good faith with you and give you a little bit of leeway. There's always going to come a time where you need a deadline extension, or you mess something up, or what have you, and you want to have a positive personal normal-ish human relationship with the person on the other side of the screen. Generally, I cannot stress enough how busy people in publishing are. In corporate media in general, really any corporate job, but I can speak specifically to corporate media. If you have a day job like this, if you know, you know. We have been in a downward spiral for decades, but especially the last 2 decades, where salaries have not risen to match inflation, where when people leave, they do not backfill those roles, where fewer people are asked to do more work for essentially less pay. It is not uncommon, I'd say it is actually, again, a feature, not a bug, for people's jobs to really be 2, 3, or 4 people's jobs all rolled into one, where 20, 30 years ago, literally 5 people would have done the work that one person is doing now. I just cannot stress enough how bonkers, banana pants insane it can be at a lot of these corporate jobs, but especially in publishing. I am someone who in my corporate day job, I do the work of 3 or 4 people. I am stressed, I am overwhelmed, I am juggling a lot of balls, and people are human and mistakes happen. So that is to say, a little bit of patience goes a very long way. This doesn't mean you're a doormat and you put up with incompetence. There are definitely people in publishing who are not particularly good at their job. That's the case at any imaginable job. There's always the duds. But again, with that assuming good faith thing, assume good faith and do your best to kind of be patient with positive communication to work through something. Specifically, this brings me to nudges and addressing when things aren't happening. First of all, your agent is there in your corner. How many times can I say that? But it's totally true. It is actually literally your agent's job to do a lot of the kinds of nudges and follow-ups that are awkward for an author to do. So lean on your agent in those cases. If you haven't gotten your manuscript back when expected with your dev edits, or if there's a delay in getting an answer about a marketing thing, your agent is there to be your go-between. Not even to mention when things are actually really wrong. But sometimes it's perfectly natural for you to nudge. I'm an author who does a lot of my own direct communication. I copy my agent as needed, but I think especially because of my day job, I'm super comfortable directly emailing my editor, publicist, etc., and kind of taking care of business. Now, this is partly personal opinion, and opinions definitely vary. I have worked with some people who have different feelings about nudges, nudge schedules, and nudge tone, but I'm gonna share how I feel about nudge frequency and nudge tone. So nudges are absolutely appropriate when there is a to-do, it has been stated, it has been acknowledged, and you're anxiously awaiting for something to be done. Don't nudge too often. I know some people who think you should nudge every 48 to 72 hours. Don't do that, I will murder you. Your editor will murder you. That is ridiculous. Unless it's a really special circumstance where you're really down to the wire and something, and I can think of very few where an author would need to do that kind of nudging. At least use your agent as a bad cop if you're really down to the wire on something. But in the normal course of publishing business, be fluid with your nudges. First of all, ask for things way ahead of time whenever possible, because there are a ton of moving parts in different departments and just everyone juggling lots of different things all the time. So you tend to need a lot of runway to get something done, which is actually also why editors always give us fake deadlines, because we're often late. They build in extra time, and so should you. Keep your nudges friendly. Avoid passive-aggressive language, and again, assume best faith. When something's behind or something's messed up or something is sent to you and you feel slighted by it, don't immediately jump into like chaos triage mode. If you have a strong emotional reaction to something, your agent is there as a soundboard, they're there to jump in, but also sometimes letting something kind of sit and cool for a day or a few and then sending a gentle, friendly, good faith follow-up can kind of smooth things out. There's a big difference between kind of people being really busy and getting behind or something slipping someone's mind and someone who's incompetent at their job. If you do think someone is genuinely incompetent at their job, talk to your agent. That's a whole other situation to triage, but in the normal course of things, weekly to every like 10 to 14 days is a pretty good nudge schedule depending on the urgency of the request. I like to give people like good faith timelines to actually do the thing. Sometimes things take way longer than you think they do, and so I try to be pretty gentle with my personal nudge timelines. I appreciate that from other people. And this all said, if a deadline is approaching and something needs to happen, it is not only okay, but appreciated to send a gentle, friendly, hey, just checking up before this deadline reminder, because people are human and they mess up. I mess up all the time. And I love it when someone sends me just an email like, hey, just checking in about this. And I go, oh my God, thank you so much. I totally spaced on it. Basically, you want to be the helpful reminder, not the passive aggressive bitchy nudge, if that makes sense. Another thing to bear in mind is that you are not your editor, sometimes your agent, your publicist, your marketers, etc. only priority. You are a priority, though sometimes you're not a priority at all, which is a whole other thing. But you are one among dozens and dozens of authors and books that any given person might be working on. Editors might have smaller lists, but publicist lists are multiplied from there, and you can extrapolate. You know, a sales rep is responsible for every single book in a given season, and so on and so on. Always remember the multiplier. Whatever the thing is of course of vital importance to you, to us as the author, because we are one author. We have our book, and it's front of mind for us, and it's deeply personal. Publishing employees work on a lot of different books, and they have to kind of triage and manage their priorities on their own time. There's only so many hours in the week, and again, they're overworked and underpaid. And weeks are these weird things in corporate life that it's really hard to explain. Again, we as authors, we're like, well, it's Monday, and I asked about this thing, like, surely they can respond by Thursday. That's 4 whole days. It's hard. It's like a time slip. It's insane how quickly time goes in a corporate grind, juggling a lot of different priorities. So this kind of goes to that kind of nudge thing and being a little patient and generous and assuming good faith. Just kind of take a deep breath and just realign your expectations of how long things should take, remembering that you are not your team's only priority. You are a priority, hopefully. So you know how I said you should endeavor never to be the worst part of someone's day? We're going to talk about passive-aggressive copies. What are passive-aggressive copies? This is when something's happening, something's going on. Usually you're upset, you think that they've done something wrong, they've messed something up, and you decide to put whoever this employee is in their place by copying their boss on your next reply. There's a special place in corporate hell for people who do this. Look, sometimes you gotta add someone to the CC. Really, there's power in a sneaky BCC just to keep someone aware, but the passive-aggressive hand slap copy of someone's boss, don't do it. There's always another way to loop in another person or to, you know, escalate something civilly. You were gonna piss off that employee. You were actively trying to embarrass them and put them in their place. They know that that's what you're doing, and they're going to dislike you for it. It's just simply not gonna have the effect you think it's gonna have. For all you know, the boss thinks you're a problem, sorry, maybe, and they're gonna laugh about it. Or maybe that person is on thin ice and you get them in trouble. You get them fired, I don't know. Now you're on someone's shit list. The thing about small industries like publishing, media, is they're small industries, and you never know where someone's gonna end up in 2, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. And this goes across the board. This isn't just publishing employees, this is authors too. This is why when we talk about social climbing, like, don't be a dick, because you don't know where someone's gonna be in 5 to 10 years. It's just always, you know, be nice to everyone. I don't know. But yeah, the passive-aggressive copy is a dick power move that's just not gonna get you where you think it's gonna get you. You're gonna feel temporarily good about yourself and like you did something. You're on someone's shit list. There's now gonna be a dartboard with your face on it in the office. So just don't do that. So, but what do you actually do when you need to loop in a new person or you need to escalate a situation? Some ideas. First of all, when in doubt, always copy your agent on emails if that is best for you and that's what you feel comfortable with. That way, they're already apprised of what is going on and they can use their own communication channels to deal with something as it is happening. You can also forward an email to your agent or appropriate person, though I would say when you do that, just because you don't go behind their back in front of their face doesn't mean you can't face repercussions. Be mindful of when you are looping in, escalating something with a forward, an FYI. I would advise, even if your cupcakes are really frosted over whatever it is, be circumspect. Generally, I would talk to your agent first, but I would also be very clear about what it is that you actually want. Because the thing is, Fire and Brimstone feels really good in the moment. And I won't lie, there are absolutely some authors who are honest raging assholes, and their agents are kind of raging assholes, and they do Fire and Brimstone often, and I won't lie, a lot of them get what they want, but a lot of them earn enemies. You have to have really good sales to be an asshole in publishing, and 8 times out of 10, you're not gonna have the sales to be an asshole, so don't be an asshole. I mean, generally, I don't think you should be an asshole, but that's kind of the gist of it there. So Fire and Brimstone and asking your agent to like get them, you know, to fix this now is gonna feel really good, but I personally advise any other method of solving a problem. Assuming good faith, being friendly, saying, oh, this is really great, but I was thinking, or I was hoping, or what if we did this? I think that kind of approach is always going to lead to a smoother, happier, better, and productive business relationship. It doesn't mean don't be a squeaky wheel, but I sincerely hope you have a wonderful professional agent who is very good at being a squeaky wheel without being an asshole. That is the perfect medium. You know, if your agent's an asshole, I won't lie, I have absolutely seen situations where I feel that an agent made an author-publisher relationship worse because the agent went in guns blazing and pissed off the publishing team. It can go any number of ways. But essentially, when there is a problem, try to troubleshoot that problem as best you can with a hopefully very even keel agent on your side or other people that you can bring into the conversation, or at the least de-escalate an initial response to soften whatever's going on and then bring in the person that you wanted to bring in the first place. This can mean have kind of a couple of neutral emails and then copy in the higher up. It can mean a couple of neutral responses, then start a new email chain. Leave a little bit of breathing room so that the person who's essentially pissed you off, who may have legitimately screwed something up, doesn't feel like you are coming for their ass. You want to avoid being overly and pointedly punitive, because that's just gonna rub people the wrong way, and in the long term, that's what damages your business relationships and your reputation. Which brings me aptly to corporate media business norms, or really like vibes. I just want to talk about like vibes, because every business industry, they vary widely in terms of kind of what is accepted business practice and what kind of personality types and business interactions lead to fruitful relationships. I say this because I've absolutely observed over the years individuals who come from different industries where it's far more the norm, where you have to be blunt, you have to advocate for yourself, that coming in guns hot is actually the way to go to get things done. And they come into publishing with that same kind of go get 'em corporate approach, and it backfires on them. Media and publishing is absolutely a bit more laid back in a lot of ways, a lot more like it's everything I've been describing. It's the almost like kill them with kindness, kind of like, you know, I think of it like a lazy river. Sometimes that is what working in corporate media feels like. Like you're on a raft. Sometimes it's white river rafting, but you're on like a floaty and you're on a lazy river, and you're like, someone's passing you by who you need someone from, and they're just waving at you like, when it gets done, it gets done. Because at the end of the day, we don't cure cancer. It's not rocket science. We don't save lives. It's publishing or it's television or it's what have you. On the plus side, maybe not for every publishing professional, certainly not editors, but at least on the side of the business I'm on the media side, in distribution, it leads to work-life balance, people who are happier employees, they stay in their jobs longer, because there's not this like go, 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 aggressive, everyone screaming at each other kind of corporate communication culture. So if you bring that attitude in, people aren't gonna like you. It's not the vibe. As I said, certainly some assertiveness is gonna get you somewhere, squeaky wheels and all that. And there are some aggressive assholes who do get ahead. You know what? If you become a bestseller, you can be a dick. Go for it. But generally speaking, just not the vibe. I know in my corporate life, if someone is constantly on your ass and being a dick and being passive aggressive or like actually actively being aggressive, you are simply not going to go out of your way. You're not going to prioritize doing anything nice for them, and you're certainly not going to prioritize doing anything for them in a timely manner. We have to prioritize our work days, and I don't prioritize people I don't like. That's just, I think, generally a corporate rule, and so bear that in mind for publishing. And by the way, it's not just being nice. Something that has definitely come up in my day job and I think absolutely affects publishing. It's not just being passive aggressive or being a dick. Sometimes it's simply being unreasonable and entitled. People who are really entitled and feel entitled to your time and your work and your prioritization and repeatedly don't listen or care about or consider context of the business, those are people you actually ultimately deprioritize. The client who's always in your face like, I should be the most important, why aren't you doing this? You need to do this now. And when you very reasonably explain, oh, I'm waiting on so-and-so to do such and such and blah, 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 and then they're mad at you about things that are out of your control or are perfectly normal for your business, those aren't people you want to work with. And that's why it's part of your agent's job to handle certain communication for you, to kind of set your expectations as an author and then temper kind of the tone of conversations and of expectations and what is reasonable with your publisher. That's really why that middleman job exists, to kind of be a bridge between the two sides. But all of that said, publishing is also incredibly conservative. And I don't mean politically. I mean in terms of business norms and business traditions and business structure. As I said, it's an incredibly top-down, stereotypical, you know, CEO, COO, CFO to, you know, president, VPs, director. It just funnels down. There are processes in place and they're pretty rigid and people are pretty buttoned up and like, this is the process and this is the way it is. It's why publishing is slow to change. It's why publishing absolutely, while trying to change, messes stuff up all the time. It is a massive, old-fashioned, traditional business. And it plays a large part in why people expect people to be a bit more reserved, more professional, and you can absolutely be too casual, too kind of loosey-goosey with publishing, and that can also lead to problems. You know, I say it's a more chilled out vibe. It is and it isn't. It's like, I do think of it like a lazy river, but it also varies department to department and publisher to publisher. If you come from a far more relaxed background or you've worked in industries where, you know, there's not as much top-down management, you might also struggle with some of the rigidity of publishing and how things work and who you're allowed to talk to and the chain of command that they have to go up to get anything done and the restrictiveness of budgets. You can want something, your editor can want to give it to you, but if there's literally no budget or the person above her is like, nah, there's nothing they can do. As I try to wrap this up, I know I went all in on email. I'll touch briefly with all of this in consideration on other forms of interaction and communication, phone calls or video calls or in person, just bearing everything in mind that I just said. When you're talking to any member of publishing, but especially the higher up you go, do your best to be super professional. Dress appropriately if you're going to be on video or if you're seeing someone in person. You don't have to necessarily dress business casual, but I'll tell you that it can never hurt. You definitely don't want to be too casual in your approach with any publishing professional. Don't be overly familiar or personal when you're talking to them. You need to master the art of business small talk. It sounds trite and cliche, but you can literally talk about the weather and there's nothing wrong with it. Asking how someone's day is generally, but if they ask you, don't unload on them how your day is really going. It's okay to ask general things about their life. It's normal in business relationships, business casual relationships, to say, hey, how's the wife? How are the kids? How's grad school going, or what have you? But you're not going all in on the specifics of their life. You're not prying for extra details, nor revealing too many details about your life. Though that said, in the interest of the top-down model, you are definitely in a position where it behooves them, it is actually a part of their role to get to know you. You are essentially their client in a lot of ways. Oh gosh, I didn't even get into like partner and client and affiliate relationships, corporate fun, but you are essentially the client. So it is part of their job to get to know you and to, if not literally care about you on a personal level, but to be seen to care about you on a personal level. Don't take it too literally. Reminder, no one who works in publishing is your best friend. They're not your family and they're not your therapist, but that doesn't always go both ways. Definitely be careful of being too familiar with publishing professionals when you are spending time with them. Keep a lot of your conversation to top level, kind of like small talk or professional talk, but be careful when you do professional talk. What's nice about email communication, which again, you're gonna be doing 90% of the time or through your agent, is that you can write things out and look them over and edit them. You can even have other people look at them before you send something, but in person, on the phone, video call, or in person, you have to be more thoughtful about what you say. Look, I'm someone who definitely can have like a semi-casual professional chat with people on my publishing team, but they're not people who you're going to spill tea with or gossip with or ask them to tell you insider information about things. You have to be very, very circumspect. It doesn't mean it's a never, but the people who are able to have those sorts of conversations form deeper relationships with publishing professionals over a long period of time, and it's usually in-person interaction that's going to engender that kind of thing. So I'm just telling you to be a little bit careful. Another tip I have for this mode of professional communication, especially if you're doing like a video call or a phone call, if it's about something like a marketing plan, or if something isn't going well, first of all, if it's really a problem, 9 times out of 10, your agent is going to have a solo phone call with your editor or whoever needs to be apprised of what is going on, and you won't have anything to do with it. This is a good thing. I can feel like control freak, like you want to be involved in every conversation. It's actually a good thing that you don't have to be involved in every conversation. Let that process happen as it is. But perfectly often, in usually neutral, well, the situation will likely feel neutral to your publisher, but you might have a lot of feelings about something. Let's take a marketing call as an example. I strongly recommend you prep with your agent ahead of time. Definitely have your agent on any kind of call like that, first of all, but prep with them ahead of time and decide who's going to cover what. If you have any big asks or concerns, maybe it's something that your agent feels, or your agent has a prep call with your editor before, so your editors are already aware. Essentially, always have lots of communication so that you don't end up in a situation where you're on a professional call and you feelings dump on your team. Don't do that. It's not a good idea. Because generally when you have corporate communication, the endless Teams calls, I'm on so many Teams calls. Well, sometimes there are like little moments at the beginning of a call or at the end of a call to catch up with people. And again, it's that business casual small talk. Even when things are slightly more heated, we don't get into feelings dump shouting matches on professional calls. That's just generally not a done thing, at least certainly not in this industry, not between the team and the author, at least. I'm sure publishing has tons of their contentious moments on business calls, but you, for the most part, are not going to be involved in them, so bear that in mind. So now I'm sure I've really scared you. It's not that complicated. This might only really be overwhelming if you are completely unfamiliar with business communication, but when in doubt, just always consider professionalism, be as friendly as possible, assume good faith, and talk to your agent. Lean on your agent, rely on your agent to help you with this stuff. A lot of agents will actually field the majority of communication if you prefer for them to do that, or they'll be copied on everything that you exchange with your publishing house just to make you feel a lot more secure. This is one of the many reasons agents are so valuable in traditional publishing, because it is a weird, complicated, complex business with a lot of like spoken norms and unspoken norms, and your agent is there to help you navigate. I feel like this is a lot. I also feel like I've probably skipped some things, but we'll call this your general overview for business communication. I want to know down below in the comments anything you have questions on, or if you are also in the corporate media grind, things that I have forgotten. And actually, specific to publicity, I have a whole separate issue on some of my advice for working with a publicist specifically, so you can check that out. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and happy writing.